as women also, and I think my generation a lot as well, where we've been told you need to be independent, you need to be financially independent, you need to be independent this way, that way. And of course, all of that is important, but we've taken it to another extreme where we think it's bad to like rely on someone or ask for help, which really doesn't serve a purpose at all. We need to be able to seek out each other's help and guidance. I think we need to get that idea out of our head. We need to normalize seeing women in different fields, seeing women succeed in different fields. And the more that happens, both men and women will normalize it like that. It's not work-life balance every day. That balance is about understanding that every day there is a different priority. And are you able to prioritize and fully be there without guilt?
Hi, Yeshoda, and welcome to the AboutHer Show. This is a show where we get trailblazing women to share the story of their lives with us, to tell us about their successes, failures, ups and downs, challenges, all of it. And this way, not only do they get a platform to showcase themselves, but they also help us inspire other women. Women who are listening in, who have dreams, ambitions, aspirations, but for some reason are not able to fulfill them. And along with women, we also get men on the show, men who champion such trailblazing women. Because we believe that for a truly gender inclusive world, men and women need to be allies in this journey. And of course, as I told you before, I mean, I've known about you and the work that you're doing, and flowers are something very, very close to my heart. So I was kind of meaning to get you on the podcast for a very, very long time. But like they say, things happen when they are meant to happen. So finally, today is the day, and I'm so glad we could make it. And a very, very warm welcome to you.
Thank you so much. I'm super excited to be here. And I've been looking forward to this for a while as well. So I'm glad we're finally getting a chance to do this.
Yes, absolutely. All right. So, just like an icebreaker, if you could tell us a little bit about your, early life, your journey, and how you got into this, this whole idea of, you know, working with fresh flowers and creating this brand and getting onto the Shark Tank and all of that.
Mhm. So I guess my exposure to business started when I was very young. My parents have been in business. They started a rose farm the year I was born. And as most young entrepreneurs, when they start off, they were always really busy with the business. And they obviously had two young children at that point as well, me and Ria. So they would take us along with them every time they went for their farm visits or work trips and everything. And they were really good at making it seem like a really fun exercise. They would always make it seem like it was this huge adventure we were going on when they just had work to do and they needed an excuse to like take us. But that was great. So early on, we were always exposed to business. We were always exposed to their excitement around the business that they were building. So from when I was young, I was always interested in business. I didn't know what I would do, but I did want to be in the field in general, or just thought that business wasn't just like an option in terms of career, but something that could really change things for the ecosystem, right? Like creating a product or a service that was different was something that excited me. And I saw that with my parents' business where my dad started growing roses. And I remember when I was a kid and I would go to school and people would obviously ask you, right, what do your parents do? And I would say, my dad grows roses. And my friends would make fun of me because they're like, what do you mean he grows roses? Like, how can he afford your tuition? And I remember I went for my US visa appointment too. And then they asked me, they're like, can he afford to send you? Which was like funny for me because I saw the kind of business my parents built with it. My dad took this product that he was so excited about and he said, I'm going to be the best at it. And he built the largest business in the world, essentially. Like that, we had the largest rose farm at one point and stuff like that. So I saw how that excitement and passion around something could make a really big business, even if people didn't really understand it. So yeah, I went off. I did my schooling in India and a little bit in Ethiopia. Then I went to college in the US. I did my master's in accounting and undergrad in business and psychology. Then I decided to come back to India. I always knew that I wanted to be back. It was just more exciting to be here. And once I did, with my parents for a bit, that gave me a lot of exposure in terms of how to run a business and agriculture in general, and flowers particularly. But in our home, we're all expected to be independent. My granddad had his own business. My dad started something on his own. And the question was always, okay, what are we going to do now? So after a couple of years, I started looking at what I wanted to start. And just, I think, being in that flower ecosystem with my dad. And once I just happened to be working at home, and my
Mm.
mom was doing her daily puja. And then it just kind of clicked that we come from a home where flowers are so easily accessible.
Yeah.
And yet, puja flowers were so difficult for my mom to get. And the quality was so important, but she wasn't getting it. And puja is supposed to be a peaceful experience, right? But it was such a like chaos at home before the puja started to get the good flowers and everything. And then it felt like there was something there that we should explore. And yeah, that's how the idea of Hoovu started. And then, of course, Ria was in the US back then, and I would keep bothering her to help me with things. I would be like, can you help me with this website? Can you do this? And
Hmm.
then I think a couple of weeks in, I was like, Ria, I think it's time for you to come here and join me. And yeah, we started the business together.
Wonderful. And how many years has it been since you started?
5.5, I guess almost 6 years in February.
Wow, wow, wow. So wonderful, wonderful. And like I said, flowers are something which is so close to my heart. So I just love the idea, and that too, puja flowers. All right. So tell me, Yashoda, anything that you do in life is always, it comes with challenges. It's not always, like a easy sailing, but there are challenges of all kinds. And if you happen to be a woman, challenges can be multifold, can be many more than what a man would generally face. So what were the kind of challenges that you faced in your journey, and would you attribute some of those to your gender, or you think gender didn't really make any difference in your life?
Mhm. Definitely a lot of challenges. Generally, when we talk about it, I mean, there was no other brand that was in the puja flower space.
Yeah.
So essentially, we were category creators that way, right? And of course, that comes with a lot of excitement, and there's not a lot of established competition to deal with. But at the same time, people didn't really understand the idea in the beginning. There were a lot of investors that we met. They were like, "Oh, do people still do puja? Like, is this even a business?" And I remember Ria and I would spend a lot of time justifying it in the beginning, and later we realized that if someone doesn't get the crux of how important puja is to people in India, then the idea is already lost, right? So it took us a while to even understand that, because when you start something and it's so new and it's your baby and everyone's kind of poking holes at it, it feels like you have to keep justifying it to everybody and anybody. But I
Mm,
think as what really helped us is none of our customers ever questioned the idea. Like whenever I would meet someone new and they're like, "What are you doing?" And I would say, I'm building this business around puja flowers. If it was someone that does puja, I could literally see their eyes light up and be like, "Oh my God, how do I sign up?" I
mm,
think that's what gave us a lot of validation to the challenge. And of course, other things like we were in the perishable space, and flowers obviously have a very small shelf life. We worked on the shelf life elongation itself, which has been one of the big disruptors in our business. And we took the flower shelf life from 3 days to up to 2 weeks, which was really a big game changer for us. But coming up with that, making sure that's being implemented, and just challenges that come around perishability was something that was new. Uh, these were general challenges. Of course, there were some women-centric things too. One
yeah.
huge advantage that I think Ria and I had is, so we're three sisters. Our youngest sister is much younger.
Mm,
Growing up in a home which was very female dominated, my dad was the only male figure in the house, and he's
yeah.
always been such a champion that I think we didn't even realize a lot of challenges that we were facing because of our gender.
Wow.
Because growing up, it felt like an even playing field always. In school, we were always surrounded by teachers and peers who expected the best from us. I don't think I ever had a teacher who would look at me and be like, "You can get away with not doing that well." And it
Mm,
was the same thing at home. Excellence was always expected, ambition was always expected. Like if I had a certain goal for the business and I discussed it with either of my parents, they would be like, "That's it, like not double or triple." So
mm,
I
mm.
think having that expectation where people around me challenge me so much, I never felt small because of my gender,
Okay.
which was a great advantage when we started Hoovu. There were certain things, but it would take me time to even realize. Like for instance, once I visited one of the flower markets with my dad,
Mm,
and I was driving myself that day. He happened to be awake, and I was like, "Can you drive me?" Like literally the only reason he came. And I
mm,
remember we were just walking around, and I was doing some research, and I needed some price data. So I was like, "Hey, I'm just going to go there and get that data." And my dad was like, "No, no, you don't go, because I mean, you're the only woman here, so it'll be conspicuous. Let me go." Until he said that, I didn't even realize that I was the only woman there. Like I was so busy in my own world trying to figure out my stuff, which I think ended up being a very big advantage for us.
Okay.
But yes, implicit biases like that have always existed, whether it was in the market or when we were designing a lot of machinery for our warehouse. And Ria would go around for these visits. There were a lot of people that questioned her and her ability to be able to design these machines, regardless of having her degrees and whatever it was, right?
Mhm.
So I think those exist. I'm definitely going to say that we do come from a very privileged background, given the support that we had from our family, the education, the ecosystem. So I think it then comes down to those of us that have those advantages to create an atmosphere where other people don't have to deal with the same challenges.
Right, right. That's so well said. Because if you have that advantage, then not only put it to use for yourself, but for someone else as well. Extend it
Mhm,
just a little bit more. So
mhm,
tell me, growing up, if you could kind of reflect, who do you think was someone like a role model for you, or who inspired you, or mentored you, or any of those?
mhm. I mean, it's really difficult for me to pick one person because I've been so lucky in terms of mentors,
Mm.
whether it was through growing up or even once we started Hoovu, there have been so many amazing mentors that have guided Ria and me in so many different ways. Our
Yeah,
parents have always been great mentors. We do keep bothering them with questions about the business, and just, I think seeing them build their business just gave us so much perspective or so much confidence to be able to build something on our own.
yeah.
If I had to pick one person, I guess right before I started Hoovu, when I was confused if I was ready, I
Mm.
remember reading Phil Knight, the Nike founder's book, Shoe Dog.
Okay, yeah.
And I felt very underconfident at that point. I felt like I wasn't ready to do this, and I was questioning myself a lot. And I remember reading his book, and a large part of his narrative was about surrounding himself with smart people and hiring the right team and having that right team do things. I think that gave me a lot of confidence to take that step and launch Hoovu. So I should definitely give him some credit for that.
For sure, for sure. See, sometimes it's, it's not, doesn't have to be a person around you. You can just kind of
Yeah,
get influenced or get mentored in that sense, from somebody else, because someone who's been on a similar journey can show you the path, sometimes. Or
absolutely.
so tell me, you of course now been there, done that in a way. But if someone were to, right now, if you find someone who's on the threshold of wanting to get into the entrepreneurial journey, starting, their own business or something like that, what would be the 3 tips that you would like to share with them? I mean, tips that are top of your mind, which you feel are a must do.
Mhm. I would like to add the disclaimer that I have a long way to go, and
Of course.
probably my learnings will continue to change. But from what I have learned so far, and I would love to share with people, I think the first thing, and I always say this, is that starting is half the journey.
Yeah.
And we get so caught up in our own mind, overthinking to like take that first step, and it feels so much scarier than it actually ever is.
Mhm.
So I would say take that first step, and especially a lot of women as well. I think we've in a lot of ways in society we're brought up to be perfectionists and to do well and to know everything about everything, and yeah, in school, college, that works, but in the real world you'll never know everything. There's always going to be that variable. So taking that first step, I think, is like the biggest advice I have gotten in my own journey, and I would say to others. Something else that a mentor actually said to me once that has stuck with me for the last 5 years. He said, a startup is not a business. A startup is an experiment to build a business. So keep experimenting.
Oh,
And I thought that was so profound. It was so simple, but
yeah.
it's so easy to get caught up and say, this is my business. But when you're starting up, like things will keep changing. You have to be agile. And when you treat everything you're building as an experiment, then you don't really look at anything as a success or a failure. You constantly look at everything as learnings. And every failure is a learning to another experiment, right? And that's the attitude that Ria and I have at work too. Whenever we want to try something new, we're like, let's look at it as an experiment. This is the budget, this is the resources we want to put in it, this is the timeline that we're going to look at it. We can't run it forever. And
Mm.
then these are kind of the factors that we're going to look at as whether this is working or not. And when
Right.
you do that, it really takes away that burden of am I going to succeed or fail, which is what we're constantly thinking. And it allows you to constantly try new things, because that's where you will find a solution that works for you and the business.
Mm.
And I guess the last tip would be guess not directly related to work, but find something outside of work to anchor you.
Okay.
Especially when you're starting your business, it's so easy to allow the business to take over your entire life. And I am guilty of it, and I'm sure most entrepreneurs are,
Mhm.
which is also needed to a large extent when the business is young. But finding something which is your safe space or gives you that like time of meditation and thinking, right, without any direct impact on your business, I think that is super important. It allows you to get that space, and allows you to just come back stronger to work as well.
Absolutely. You need that little time out, little break, because
Yeah.
otherwise, if you just get all consumed by what you're doing, then sometimes I think
Mhm.
you lose your objectivity also. You get so wrapped up
Yeah,
in it that you're not able to look at things in a very objective manner. So I think taking that time out
absolutely.
is also very essential. All right.
Mhm.
Yashoda, now, of course, all of us, have these two sides to our lives. There is the professional side, the work, the work part. And then, of course, there is the personal side. And while both men and women need to balance these, or maybe at least if not the balance, integrate both of them into their lives, women need to do a little more, maybe not a little more, but a lot more than what men have to do. So,
Mhm.
how do you find that, when there are so many expectations from society, you should be doing this and you should be doing that also, apart from the work that you're doing? So, how do you try and bring that integration into your life between your professional and personal life?
Mhm. Yeah, I mean, here too, I've been super lucky because right now I stay with my parents. I'm not married. I don't have a lot of additional responsibilities in terms of kids and a family or a home to run.
Yeah.
So obviously, that way, I'm very privileged right now in whatever's going on in my life, where I can get away with late nights at work or pushing myself and not having to worry that there are these other responsibilities that are falling through. Um, but those will come up, right? And there are always times where certain things at work take precedence or certain things in personal life take precedence. And I remember once I was listening to a talk by Kiran Mazumdar, and she was talking about work-life balance. And she's like, that it's not work-life balance every day. That balance is about understanding that every day there is a different priority. And are you able to prioritize and fully be there without guilt? I think a lot of times, more than the actual responsibilities, we're all amazing at figuring out a way to get through our responsibilities, but we have this constant guilt that, oh,
Yes.
I'm not doing enough for my family or I'm not doing enough for my work and so on. And recognizing that, like, if there's something that comes up at home and it needs my attention, that is going to be my priority. But am I okay with coming to terms with that and saying, yes, I'm not able to give my 100% this week at work, but it's not an everyday thing, right? Things compound. And when you're building a business, it's not about giving that 100% every day, but you're giving enough and planning enough that when you're not able to give the 100%, it's still able to do well. And
Right.
same way, when sometimes, like for us, festive season is extremely busy. And I'm literally like a zombie in the warehouse, all the time in the warehouse, never going home.
Mm.
Recognizing then that that's my priority then and planning my personal life around that. Of course, as I said, again, easier for me when I don't have these additional responsibilities. But then what does my responsibility then become? That as someone who's leading a company and employs both men and women, can I create that ecosystem of balance for them and recognize that not everybody has that privilege? There are a lot of people in my team that have to go back, then cook for their family, then take care of their kids and so on, or
Mm.
whatever other responsibilities they have. Like, how do we create that ecosystem where they are able to find their own balance as well?
Right. That's well
And
said.
I, sorry,
Yeah. Sorry.
I
Yeah.
was just going to add, like, something I read once, right? And it was talking about how we're all on this like race to become independent.
Mm.
But there is no such thing as being independent. Just by being humans and social beings, the concept is more interdependence, where you understand how you build that circle of dependence on each other and recognize that it's important. As women also, and I think my generation a lot as well, where we've been told you need to be independent, you need to be financially independent, you need to be independent this way, that way. And of course, all of that is important, but we've taken it to another extreme where we think it's bad to like rely on someone or ask for help,
Mhm.
which really doesn't serve a purpose at all. We need to be able to seek out each other's help and guidance. And that's where this idea of interdependence really stood out to me, that there I need to tap into my networks. I need to be able to say, hey, I need someone to help me out here, or at work, ask for help, or in your families, or whatever it is, and take that guidance. And I think that's the only way we can all help each other grow, rather than assuming that, I can just do it all by myself.
No, you can't, because, like you rightly pointed out, we live in a society, we're surrounded by people. Not everything is in our control, and we are not magicians at the end of the day. We are human beings with our limitations. So it's okay to reach out and ask for help. I mean, there's nothing wrong with that. So yeah, it
Yeah.
is, I think, something that we should recognize. While independence is, of course, important, but so is interdependence, recognizing
Mhm.
that there are other people around us. Okay.
Absolutely.
So, while of course we're all, working to become successful, to, get to our goals and all of that, but all this, also comes with, a set of disappointments and setbacks, sometimes things not working out the way we want them to or the way they should work. But then we have to get up and, not only face them, but then get going after that. So when you are faced with something like this, things not going according to the plan or something which is a disappointment for you, how do you kind of get back on track?
For me, my team is a big reminder of like how far we've come and how far we essentially have to go. We're a team of about 100 people at this point.
Wow.
So when I feel a little bummed and I don't want to wake up in the morning or deal with whatever I need to deal with that day, I need to remind myself that it's not a one-woman show. It's not my decision. I am in a role of responsibility, and I think that really pushes me. And it helps that I have a great co-founder, my sister Ria, who is so hardworking, so driven, and she really embodies like karma yoga, working as an instrument, not having expectations. So when I see her, I'm like, okay, I need to get it together, and I think that really helps me.
All right. So it's always good to have a good support system around you, because not every day is
Absolutely.
the same for you. But then when you know that, when you have that sense of responsibility and when you have people around you who are there,
Mhm.
for you, I think that makes a lot of difference. All right. So, like I mentioned earlier, of course, you had this dream of, having your own business. And while, as you said, you have miles to go and many more things you want to achieve in your life, but still you've come to a point where there must be so many young girls looking up to you and wanting to be like you. Okay. So, if you were to offer some piece of advice to the young girls of today who are on the thresholds of their personal and professional lives, what would you tell
Mhm.
them? What would you advise them? Because I feel, that this generation has so much information, so much exposure that sometimes it may be difficult for them to make sense out of everything that surrounds them and figure a path out for themselves. So, what would you like to tell them?
Mhm. The first thing is like, don't be afraid to try things and fail. It's okay to fail.
Yeah.
And I remember once reading something where someone was like, she keeps a list of her daily failures. Like she has a target that she has to fail X number of times each day. And I
Okay.
thought it was such a fun way to look at it because we're so scared to think of failures, right? But if I need to fail 10 times, that means I need to have pushed myself 10 times. And only then I can fail. And through that pushing is when you learn. And you only need one thing to succeed in that list to really make progress, right? So don't be afraid to fail. I was very afraid. I still am. I'm not going to say I'm not, but I'm
Mm,
working on it and recognizing that unless we get over that fear, we can never push our limits.
right.
And also, there's no such thing as perfectionism. You have to just get started on the journey. And perfection can only come in terms of intent, where you're like, okay, I want to build something that makes a difference, or I'm going to give this my best. But the outward action can never be perfect, right? So you
Mm,
just have to try your best and then leave the rest to the universe.
yes, that is so important. I think this perfection is also, I think this is so misleading. Because you
Mhm.
think that everything has to be just the right way, but it cannot be. Because, like we earlier discussed, we are not living in a world which consists only of us. There are so many other
Yeah.
people, there are so many other factors which may not be in your control. So, I guess as long as you put in your best, you should
Mhm.
be happy with that. Because, I mean, I always feel that if you can look at yourself in the mirror and tell yourself that I did the best I could have, then I think it's
Mhm.
totally fine.
Yeah.
Okay, so when we look around us, we see so many women who are, doing so well for themselves, following their dreams and passions and making a name for themselves, whether it is, as entrepreneurs or it is in the corporate world or wherever you look at it. But despite that, you know, we still feel that there are a number of barriers, a number of biases that women still have to face. So again, if you were to look around you, what were some of those biases, or what are some of those biases which come to your mind that you feel women are still having to deal with?
Mhm. Earlier, I think a lot of women had to deal with a lot more explicit biases. where people were very clear that they didn't want to hire women or had certain rules around it, or discrimination that was very directly in your face, right?
Yeah.
That does still exist in some tiers of society, in some jobs, and so on. But largely, I think something that's a little scarier that we have to deal with now is implicit bias, where no one's ever going to come out and say, I'm not going to fund you because you're a woman, or I'm not going to hire you because you're a woman, but find some sort of a turnaround, like reason as to why you're not good for the role, which may not actually be the reality, right? Or look at certain soft skills as a weakness. I just remember, this is like a silly example, but it always stood out to me when I was in business school, and they obviously prep you in business school to also act a certain way, or like, what does it mean to come off as professional and so on. And in one of my classes, my professor was talking about a firm handshake. And he's
Okay.
like, the firmer the handshake, you seem stronger. Like everyone has to have a firm handshake. And I just remember thinking, what are like, statistically, the men in this room have a stronger, firmer handshake just because they are
Yes.
stronger.
Yes. Yes.
And it's no longer about a man's handshaking you, but it's about, oh, it's a firmer handshake than the woman's. You get what I'm saying? Like,
Yeah.
obviously, yeah, okay, we can get over not doing a flimsy handshake. Everyone can learn from that, men and women. But I just felt like there was this sudden bias
Yes.
where a lot of skills that are considered innate for men are considered what we need to be. So
Yeah.
right now, a lot of us as women are trying to become men. So we're trying to say, oh, these are the or masculine characteristics that we need to take on. There might be some that are required based on the job that we're in or whatever it is, but I don't think it should move from, oh, I want to hire men and not women, and now it's moved to, I want to hire masculine features and not feminine features, recognizing that both soft skills, hard skills, all kinds of things are required in different roles and different workplaces, and trying to see where you fit in that and where it's just a bias. Like sometimes we need to improve, and sometimes we need to recognize that this is just a bias and it has nothing to do with my ability in that role. I think that's the scary challenge right now.
Yes, because like you're so rightly said, men, have become very conscious about what they say, how they say, because of, all the movements and the awareness and the exposure. But then because of that, they may also become implicit in the way they, kind of create a barrier for you, or, embody, or, just bring a bias out. So that I think could become a little difficult, because first of all, you have to be able to recognize that this is actually a bias. And then, of course,
Yeah.
dealing with it comes much later. So yeah, the implicit part of it definitely makes it scarier, as you said. Okay. So, Yashoda, when you come to these, we know that there are these biases, we know that there are these barriers, and we want, that more conversations around these things should happen and people should become aware and more exposed to all this. So, what role do you think platforms like the one we are on currently, and there are so many others like this, what role do you think they can play in helping the society get over these biases and whatever barriers they place, for women?
Mhm. Well, first step, I guess, is just recognizing that those exist, which I think is happening to a large extent right now.
Yeah.
But too much recognition means then we again get into our own head and we're like, oh, maybe I can never do it because I have all these challenges.
Right.
So I think a more positive way to look at it is to see how different people have dealt with it, both men and women. I mean,
Yeah.
men just have different biases to deal with or
Yeah.
different challenges to deal with, and different groups, right? Whichever kind of sector you sit in, there is its own challenge in that space, but recognizing how people have dealt with those in their own ecosystem and have grown past it, and also really emphasizing those success stories and moving away from women entrepreneur to entrepreneurs. Like
Yes.
that's what we are at the end of the day. But then there's this little nice subset that's been created of women entrepreneurs, and as though they are like a different species from entrepreneurs which are male. I think we need to get that idea out of our head. We need to normalize seeing women in different fields, seeing women succeed in different fields, and the more that happens, both men and women will normalize it.
Yes.
Like if you see a woman with certain soft skills succeeding and you've never seen that before, that man who's hiring the next time is no longer going to think those soft skills are a weakness because he sees someone succeed with those,
Right.
right? So just, I think, emphasizing those stories is what is going to really bring it out. And I think you're doing a great job of bringing out those stories.
You. So I think that's what it is, having more conversations, bringing out those stories to an extent where all this just gets normalized. Nobody kind of looks at it as being an exceptional thing. Okay.
Yeah.
So, Yashoda, just going to a little something which could be, which could all these things, something that could be the result of all this is the mental health of people. Like
Mm-hmm.
whether it is men or women, we all have these issues, and I think one of the things that came out of COVID was that people at least started talking about it, accepting it, that it is something which can happen. But having said that, I feel that women's mental health issues generally do not get as much importance as men's. I mean, though of course men also find it very difficult to accept that they could have something like a mental health issue. But women, because of the various challenges they face, the different stages of their lives and all of that, and also for biological reasons, go through many ups and downs. So, do you think in the society in which we live in currently, women's mental health challenges are given as much importance, or you think there is not much of a difference between the two? I mean, when it comes to the two genders.
Mhm. I think they're just different challenges for both. For men, one is just talking about emotional vulnerability and stuff like that. There's a lot of studies around how a lot of men don't have that close social circle where they can speak about what they're going through, but a lot of women tend to have that, and
Yeah.
women find it easier to express themselves because they've been told they can since they were young and so on. But other challenges are, I mean, postpartum depression itself. That's a concept that still a lot of people have not recognized as reality, and to think that so many generations of women have suffered and have not really understood why they were suffering because they didn't know this was something that existed and so on. So definitely I think overall there's a lot we can do as a society to understand mental health better, and not just deal with mental health issues after they come up. That of course needs to be done, but how do we create an ecosystem where mental disease is not the norm,
Yes.
which is what is happening, right? Like anxiety is not the norm, depression is not the norm.
Right.
How do you deal with it before? So you're creating a space where the issues are not likely to happen. And when they do, which they still will because of genetics and nature and nurture, how do we then create an ecosystem where people can heal themselves through it and have the right support system and so on? I think especially if it comes to mental health in the workplace or in entrepreneurship, there are a lot of entrepreneurs that are slowly starting to talk about it more now.
Mm.
But it is difficult because when you're an entrepreneur, you are the biggest cheerleader and
Yeah.
you are the biggest salesman, right? You're selling to yourself, you're selling to your customers, you're selling to your employees, your investors, and at some point you forget who you are and what you are as a sales person. So yeah, that mental health aspect becomes very important, and that's where that point that I made earlier of having something that's personal to you, that helps you ground yourself, whether it's time with your family, or for me, I read the Bhagavad Gita, and that's something that has really helped ground me. Or whenever I kind of lose focus, it kind of gets me back into like what I'm supposed to be focused on and so on. So having something like that, whether it's faith, family, or whatever kind of support system, I think is very important to be able to build that mental strength and um, um, I guess mental antibodies against whatever disease that does keep coming our way because it's become so common now with social media and so on.
Correct, correct. Yeah, that anchor I think is very, very important because things will
Mhm.
happen. Like there'll be so many things which are not in your control. But then if you have that anchor, or if you have, a set of people who you can vent it out to, who you can talk to it about, I think that makes a lot of difference, because I think a lot of these issues also come up because we just keep them within ourselves. We bottle
Mhm.
them up inside us because we also normalize them. We feel that it's happening to other people, it's happening to me, so it's okay. Or maybe it's not okay to talk about it. So I think it's essential to get rid of it in terms of maybe sharing it with someone, talking about it. And I think that's what counselors do, right? So
Mhm.
you need to have someone you can share your issues with. All right.
Mhm.
So, Yashoda, this is not something that you, I think, are going to face in the next few years at least. But if you were to look around you, you may have observed that a lot of people are taking up different and diverse professions nowadays, you know, uh, doing a complete turnaround from what they were doing earlier. So they're picking on
Mhm.
like hobbies and passions and sometimes just giving up on what they were doing earlier, like a doctor wanting to sing or to write, an engineer who suddenly wants to go climb the Mount Everest. So all these little things, I mean, of course, I feel it's good because it's, helping you or enriching you as a person. But what is your take on it? Why do you think this is happening? And I mean, do you think it is something good for our society? What are your views on it?
I think it's amazing. I love seeing this stuff. And I also love seeing people kind of take that break and come back into the workplace
Yeah.
because I don't think that, at least from my knowledge, that was very common in the earlier generations, right? And a lot,
Yes.
especially for women, I think this ability to change professions or come back after a while, it has suddenly opened up the workplace to a lot of women that had to leave for whatever reasons, whether it was a young child or family responsibilities and stuff. When we were much younger and we would look at my mother's generation,
Mhm.
if one of our friends' mothers left work, she left for good. It wasn't very common to see somebody come back, and it felt like that comeback was very difficult. But I think I'm seeing that a lot more now. And in fact, we're seeing it in films as well, right? When a lot of older actresses who kind of stepped away are coming back through OTT platforms and so on. And I love seeing that because I think it normalizes it for everyone else in society as well.
Mhm.
And then you realize that, okay, now the only barrier is my own mindset. The opportunities exist for me to come back, and I think it allows people to then balance their personal and professional lives a lot better.
Yeah.
If, for example, a woman wants to take a break after having a child or after getting married or whatever it is, she doesn't have that burden that, oh, I'm making this decision for a lifetime.
Yes.
It's about, okay, I can take that break for a couple of years or whatever it is, but I will have opportunities to come back again. And while, yeah, that might affect my career in the short term, it won't in the long term because I can come back. I think that's really great. And also, there's so much that we can learn through all experiences. Earlier, it was like, okay, you're in this job. What did you learn there? But someone who's out of the workplace is still working in their own way, whether it's running a home, having a child, or exploring the mountains, whatever it is. And I think that comes with a lot of cool perspectives that they can then bring to the workplace and only enrich it further. So I'm always excited to see this. And I think part of the reason that's happening is one, there's a lot that's changing continuously. I mean, I'm not even that old. I went to college like 9, 10 years ago. And
Mhm.
what I studied in marketing then is so different from what my younger sister is now studying in marketing in school.
Mhm.
Social media was not even something we spoke about in my marketing class. And now all my marketing is like centered around Facebook and Instagram and YouTube, right? So I think there's so much change that's happening that people have to keep upskilling themselves. And with that, there are a lot more opportunities to explore new fields. And also, when we were younger, there was only certain fields that people are exposed to and told that this is a good job, this is what you need to do to succeed. And a lot of people were kind of pushed into that without really thinking about it. And now they have that opportunity to say, no, this is not something that I enjoy, and I'm going to do something else. So, yeah, I think it's really brave and great to see people doing that.
Yeah, I completely agree. I just feel, these are these little soft things which fill up all those gaps in your life. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, Yashoda, we come to the final question, which is about your future aspirations. Where do you see yourself with this company, or you think you're going to build something else? What does it look like for you?
I think through Hoovu or anything that I do, something that's really important that I'm understanding and trying to figure out is building something that's sustainable and building something that is larger than me. I think it's easy to kind of get caught up in our own personal narrative and how we are important in what we build. But I think true success would be to be build something that can exist independently of me, whether it's through my team or processes or whatever it is. And yeah, that's what excites me about building it. And overall, I think building something where I feel like I have contributed more than I have taken from the universe or the world around me
Mhm.
is something that's important. And I think that only comes when our mindset changes from this insecure or like these are the things that I'm missing and this is what I want
Mhm.
to more of a gratitude or an abundance mindset. And then
Yeah.
I think the outside world anyway plays that out. So yeah, through work or through everything else, I think that's my larger goal to be able to sit in that abundance mindset and recognize that, okay, everything else that's happening is a source of abundance, not a source of some sort of deficit in any way.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think that's something that would be important to me.
Yes, and that is actually, something. So first of all, building something which, in a way, after a while, can run without you. So you give it
Mhm.
wings, those roots that it can function even if you're not around. And then, of course, all these things about sustainability, abundance, these are so important. In the,
Mhm.
I think the normal mundane of life, we sometimes lose track of all these things. We just kind
Mhm.
of focus on what is not right, what is not happening, and then we lose focus and we don't realize that how much good is happening. The fact that we can
Yeah.
sit and talk about something good did happen somewhere, and something good is happening even now. So I think that feeling of gratitude is, I think, so,
Mhm.
so critical. And I'm so glad that at this young age, you do realize that it is very, very important. So hats off to you.
Thank
So,
you.
Yashoda, while we come to the end of the conversation, we still have one little thing to do, which is the rapid fire round. So
Oh
there,
God, I'm a little nervous about.
no, not at all, not at all. Five quick questions, five quick answers. So, are you ready?
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yes,
All
as
right.
ready as I can be.
All right. So, simple one. One word that describes your leadership style.
Mm, I would say hands off.
Okay. All
Yeah.
right. That's wonderful. And I think that's so essential. All right. The next one. What's your favorite productivity hack?
Uh, Working out, actually. I think the more I work out, the more productive I am at work.
All right. Okay. The next one. What's the most challenging aspect of running your own business?
I think the fact that different challenges come up every single day,
Yes.
so you constantly have to be agile. Sorry, that's not one word, but
Yeah, yeah, that's all right. That's all right. Okay. Next one. Biggest lesson learned from a failure.
that you never really fail till you give up.
Yes.
So actual failure is only when you say, I can't do this anymore, but till then you always have another chance.
So well said. And finally, a very simple one. Any favorite book or podcast?
Oh my God, so many. But one podcast that I've been listening to a lot and I really enjoy is The Diary of a CEO.
Okay.
Um, I think just generally personal or professional life, he has great episodes. Stephen Bartlett, who talks about things there.
Yes. All right. So fine. That's the end of the rapid fire round, and you did pretty well. So, all right. And with this, we come to the end of this conversation. And if I may say so, thank you so much for being on the show. I think it's going to be so, so inspiring for young girls, for young entrepreneurs who listen to you, because what came across was, like I mentioned, the clarity of your thought, the clarity of purpose. And then you are not kind of just sort of hooked onto it. You're looking at life beyond it, which is so fulfilling, so enriching, and it kind of tells that this is what a full life should look like. So thank you so much for being on the show.
Thank you so much for having me. This was so much fun, and I think it gave me a lot to just think about as well and reflect. So thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you for tuning in to the About Her show. If you enjoyed this episode, there's plenty more from where that came from. Our previous guests have shared some amazing stories, so be sure to catch up on past episodes. To keep up with our inspiring conversations and to never miss an update, hit subscribe, rate, review, and share the love. Follow us on social media for some great content, and don't forget to check out our website www.aboutherbysangeeta.com for stories that resonate, inspire, and empower. Know a remarkable woman or an inspiring man blazing a trail? We'd love to hear from you. Drop us a note at web.abouther@gmail.com and let's bring their story to life on the About Her show.